The audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small, and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family, and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Film Foundations. This is the very first episode of the collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and Someone's Favorite Productions. I am one of your co-hosts, Ryan Verrill from the Disconnected and Someone's Favorite Productions.
And I am your other co-host, Chris Tashu, all the way from Weirding Way Media, but more aptly, The Culture Cast, where I've spent the last decade of my life talking about movies. That's a long time, folks, for those of you listening. It's a decade, a long time. Over 1,000 episodes of my life spent doing this.
1,000 is a lot, yes.
It's too many.
On this show, we will be asking and answering 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, franchise, or microgenre. And on this first episode of our show, we are covering a director that is a modern director with not a massive filmography, something that if you have not had the opportunity to dive into yet, it's not going to be too intimidating. We are going to be discussing Edgar Wright. And as usual, our job is going to be to entice you to broaden your horizons on film, encourage you to travel down film tangents and side roads that may have never been traveled down for you otherwise. So, Edgar Wright. Chris, let's start with just diving right in. What's your history with Sir Edgar Wright?
It's funny because the last time we did this episode, wink, wink, I don't think I mentioned this, and I feel like this is almost one of these moments where it's like, hey, listen to my opinion, but with a certain caveat here. As someone who, like I kind of alluded to, spent the last 10 years of my life talking about movies, I've spent the last 34 years of my life, effectively, watching movies and TV. And this is not, I didn't just start watching movies 10 years ago. If you're doing this for a living or as a hobby or just because you say, fuck it, I want someone to hear what I have to say about movies, it's often because you already loved movies. I mention all of this because when I was 17, so 2007, when Hot Fuzz came out, I had the opportunity to go to AFI Dallas, which was at North Park, for those of you DFWites, and see at AMC North Park Hot Fuzz, its premiere in the United States. Not only was Edgar Wright there, but Simon Pegg was there and Nick Frost was there. And if you are friends with me on Facebook, or if you know me in real life, I would have shown you or alluded to pictures that I took with the three of them, which are on my Facebook in shitty 2007 phone quality. Nokia, I believe, was the phone I had at the time. But it was one of those things that made an indelible impact on me because I saw Shaun of the Dead when I was 14, which was the right time in my life to see Shaun of the Dead. You would have been, what, 16, 17? So
2007, is that what you said?
2004 when Shaun of the Dead came out.
Oh, when it first came out, yes. I was 17 when it first
Yeah, so right time. I mean, 14 to 18 is the right time to be seeing Edgar Wright's first movie, Shaun of the Dead. I hadn't seen Spaced at all. I hadn't seen A Fistful of Fingers. I wasn't diving that deep into his filmography yet at that age, and it would have been really hard in 2004 to even see some of these things stateside. Sure. But all of that to say, Edgar Wright is a filmmaker who has, I wouldn't say dictated the things that I like as an adult, but definitely he speaks to me as a filmmaker because he loves the same kind of things that I do. And look, we're separated in age by 15 years because he just turned 50, which is fucking insane, right?
That's weird.
Right, yeah. But for me, Edgar Wright is a filmmaker who I have related to his films on a level that I have not related to other filmmakers' films on. And that is because he speaks to me as a filmmaker because he has something to say, I think, for a certain kind of person at a certain kind of point in their life. And I'm talking about 3 specific films in general. We can talk about other things, and we will, that come after that. But I think a lot of our discussion on this episode is going to be around 3 films specifically. But I think for me, in terms of his entire body of work, to get out in front of it is there are few film directors who have made as solid a list of movies as he has. I would say there are no bad ones in the bunch. Even if I'm not a fan of certain ones, I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch. But for me, Edgar Wright is, in terms of impact on my film going and film enjoyment, he's as big for me as a Scorsese in terms of impact on me as a film watcher. And when your favorite movie is Goodfellas, which mine is, that's a pretty big deal. So what about you, Ryan?
I'm not going to be as eloquent as that, but yes, I also saw Shaun of the Dead on initial release, not any fancy premiere, but I saw it when it first came out, and I was just around this time starting to take my walk down the horror lane. So coming across something like Shaun of the Dead was really nice because it blends that horror and comedy, and it's sort of inviting in a way that's open to fans of both genres. So it's very just wide open, come on in type of movie that you could, pretty much anybody can enjoy. And then on top of that, I really enjoyed through this first film the impact that he chooses to like deliver to the audience through music. And there's a couple scenes in this first film, especially like Can't Stop or Don't Stop Me Now, the Queen song that he does, but he obviously explores that through the rest of his filmography in a very, again, like very eloquent way. He really thinks and really sets out to make a message with the music in his films, and I adore that.
Speaking of Scorsese, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Apt comparison, I felt like. The more you're explaining this aspect of it, I mean, I can't think of another director whose needle drops are as impactful as Scorsese, because some people, I Can't Get No Satisfaction by Devo is the only version of that song, and that's because of, the way it's used in Casino. So, yeah, I think that's an apt comparison.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy with that. Yeah, the music aspect really brought me in. So after that, I was there for Hot Fuzz, and then I dove right in. And then soon after, for anybody that was around like when Netflix was first starting, funny enough, Spaced was one of the first things on the catalog that made an impact for a lot of people, because it was, now I can stream things and I have access to things that I didn't have before. What is this thing, Spaced? Because it's one of like not a ton of things that we have available to us on the internet on this brand new app that we have. And through Netflix, I got to see Spaced much earlier than I probably would have if I would have been waiting until I found out who Edgar Wright truly was. And Space is really great. It's obviously not a film, so we won't be spending a ton of time talking about it, but it's a lot of fun, and it shows who Edgar Wright would come to be as a filmmaker. A lot of those same film foundations for the rest of his life are found in every single episode of Space.
Including, but not limited to, the people that he works with. Because
Correct.
Simon Pegg and Nick Frost right there in that show. I mean, Simon Pegg is the main character of the show. And that's a big deal because Simon Pegg we'll get to it when we get to it, because there's a lot of this is going to be, again, talking about people who work with Edgar Wright as much as talking about Edgar Wright, because this is going to be a love fest in a lot of ways for certain things. And that's the other thing about this show that we kind of haven't mentioned, but our job on this show is not to demean or take down movies or kind of be, I wouldn't say negative, but overly critical, because at the end of the day, it's okay to be critical. I mean, being subjective about films is an important part of the film going experience, at least for me, and I know it is for you as well. But objectively good movies is a thing that also needs to be talked about, because things can be objectively bad, but
right.
More often than not, most things are objectively good, or at least trying to be objectively good. I don't think many people go into a creative endeavor with the idea that I'm going to make this as bad as humanly possible. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, I think most people's hearts are in the right place. Not everybody is Tommy Wiseau, but even at the end of the day, Tommy Wiseau was trying to make a good movie. So
right.
I just want to reinforce that we're not here to be those people taking things down. We're trying to be good arbiters of, I think, an ever-changing film landscape where people enjoy things a lot differently than they used to. I mean, to bring it all the way back to Space was hard to see for a very long time until it wasn't. And the advent of streaming has allowed certain things to become popular and brought back. Literally, the X-Files had a first and second redo of the show because of how popular it was on Netflix right. for a while. Suits, I'm assuming, is having something happening because of how popular it was on streaming. So streaming has really changed the way we ingest things, and to that point, you can watch all of the Edgar Wright movies on some streaming platform, I'm assuming, or you can go out and buy it, and you should, because supporting artists who make things is still cool, guys. It's never stopped being cool, I'll tell you that.
To Chris's point, I think one of the ways that I want to say it and have it be on the record for us is when we were talking about starting this, and since this is the first episode, we're going to talk about this for a little bit longer than we ever will throughout the rest of this. But instead of just being an overly positive podcast, I really want people to think of this as an anti-gatekeeping podcast, because in film bro land, in film Twitter, in pretentious film circles, there's all those people that will hear something like, oh, you've not seen X movie? How could you possibly have waited till you were 34 to see that? Or you think, Midnight Cowboy is a bad movie? How? What are you smoking? Like, different people have different opinions, and we're not going to get into something like that. What we really want to say is, come on in, watch more movies. The water's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having not seen something. None of us are ever going to be able to watch all the movies, and the best thing that you can do is just keep an open mind.
And hey, I hadn't seen Citizen Kane until I was 32, baby. Like, you know what? And there are still some movies that I have not seen, and I have no problem talking about it. And no one should have a problem talking about it either, because at the end of the day, like you mentioned, this is for everybody, and that's the thing that's important for me. Like, I know. And I always think about this because someone left an iTunes review saying that initially I might sound like an intellectual bully, which I totally understand because I speak with confidence, but I'm speaking with confidence not because I feel like I know everything, but I feel like I can share with you what I know in a way that you believe me, or at least you feel like what I'm saying is believable. And I'm also not one of those people that speaks bullshit out of my ass either. And I'm saying that not because there are people that do, but there are people that do. And it's hard to, take that seriously when you make claims and talk about things without actually knowing incontrovertible evidence. So that's the other thing. We're not trying to speak like we know everything. We're just trying to speak like we've spent the time getting to know this specific topic on this episode. Some of the episodes we do, we're not going to know everything, and our guests are going to be bringing to the table their love of things, and we're going to be learning along with you, which for me and you, I know as well, is an important aspect of this that I don't think a lot of people are doing, which is, I'm not the expert. Tell me more. That's operating from a, a power differential that a lot of people in this line of work are not comfortable doing, which is saying, I don't know everything. And I don't. Yeah, it really is. So that's where I'm at. That's where you're at. And where's Edgar Wright at in all of this?
Where is Edgar Wright? Let's get into that, because what we always want to do before we get into our topic is lay some sort of groundwork. So what we're going to do is lay out some of the history of Edgar Wright and just some very, very, very like surface level facts. We're going to go through some of his filmography, important things like, quite obviously, one of the most important things is he's from the UK. A lot of the people that he works with are all from the UK. A lot of his early works are set in the UK. Most of his work is set in the UK. He got his start, his first actual feature-length film is from all the way back in 1995. Chris already mentioned it, A Fistful of Fingers. I've still not been able to see this one. There was a rumor for years that the boutique physical media company Arrow Video was supposed to put this out. This has been rumored since like 2019, and here we are more than 5 years later. We still haven't seen it, so hopefully that comes to fruition at some point. But yeah, after that, there was a bit of a long hiatus because of Spaced. Back in 2004, he made Shaun of the Dead with his friends Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Shortly after, they made Hot Fuzz. That was in 2007. Again, a lot of the same people came and were in that movie, were a part of the creative process. 2010, he had a huge mainstream film with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And really what happened in between those two films is super interesting as well, because as we're going to talk about, he was supposed to make the movie Ant-Man during that time, and it did not come to be for him. Shortly following that, he wrote the movie Adventures of Tintin, which is something that not a lot of people talk about with Edgar Wright, but it's certainly worth mentioning. Then he directed The World's End, which is the third film in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy. That includes Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. Then Baby Driver. This is one that was, sort of not really looked at as favorably as his other films, which I don't understand because I really enjoyed Baby Driver. Then he released the documentary on the Sparks Brothers in 2021, and then his most recent feature-length film, Last Night in Soho, also in 2021. And that brings us to present. Anything else you want to add there, sir?
No, because we're going to get into some of the things that were the minor talking points that you kind of alluded to. We'll be getting into it, I think, in question 3, probably. But yeah, it's Edgar Wright's an interesting cat in terms of the movies he's made, but also in terms of the things he hasn't made, which there are some directors who they have literally pages on Wikipedia for their unreleased or unrealized projects. Looking at you, Guillermo del Toro. I mean, his seems to just get longer by the day. Oh, another unrealized project for Mr. Del Toro. But yeah, I'm really excited to see kind of where we come in on each of these questions because, like I've already alluded to, we might have some different answers.
I have a feeling we're definitely going to have some different answers. So let's get into it. We are going to start with our first question, which is always, what do you consider the foundational title for our selected subject, which is Edgar Wright? So basically, what do you think is the best film somebody should watch first to get into the filmography of Edgar Wright if they had somehow never seen any of them prior?
So I am going to go with the answer. I don't think it's the obvious answer, but I think it's kind of the safe answer in terms of a couple things. And those couple things being general public feeling towards certain genres and the kinds of movies that entertain the largest groups of people. So I mentioned the first genre being horror because some people just bristle at horror. So I can't in good conscience suggest a horror movie because, again, there will be people that discount it out of hand, which is unfair, unfortunate, but it's not. I can't change that sentiment right now, and I'm not looking to. So I err on the side of caution, which is everybody likes a good action movie. So I go with 2007's Hot Fuzz because Hot Fuzz, I think, is not a horror movie, but it is an action movie, which for me, I think, my mom loves action movies. My mom's favorite movie right now is The Beekeeper with Jason Statham. And Jason Statham, I think, for a lot of people is like action hero with a capital A. And again, action movies are kind of a least common denominator film. I think everybody and their mother loves Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his body of work would speak to that idea because he's popular everywhere. So Hot Fuzz for me is the answer because it makes Simon Pegg and Nick Frost look like bona fide action heroes, which is, if you think about it, probably the funniest thing about the entire movie, because that's like casting you and me to be action heroes. Like, we're just normal dudes, and they're just normal dudes. That's why Shaun of the Dead works so well. But again, that's a horror movie with zombies. Look, I know it's not really a zombie movie. It itself bristles at the idea of being a zombie movie. We're not going to say the Z word, being kind of what I'm getting at. But Hot Fuzz, I think, checks a lot of the boxes for me, which is he works with the people that he ends up working with a lot, which is, you know, Nick Frost, Simon Pegg. I mean, a whole host of other people. I mean, Olivia Colman's in the fucking movie, by the way.
Yeah, and hilarious.
Yeah, playing a version of a character that she plays in earnest everywhere else, which is the funny part. But Hot Fuzz, I think, is just everything that Edgar Wright is as a director. I think it is a goddamn perfect movie. I think it being a perfect movie is almost more important than it being an Edgar Wright movie. It is a singularly pitch perfect movie that is both a satirical take on a action movie, because the stakes of the movie are shockingly low, though the movie tries to make it seem like they're world ending. But at the same time, it is a fantastic action movie as well, which the best send-ups of genre movies are also good versions of the genre as well. Hot Fuzz being one of them. I'd say Shaun of the Dead is a good send-up of zombie movies as well. But again, I can't in good conscience suggest a horror movie, not because I don't like horror movies, but because a lot of people don't like horror movies. And I have to be cognizant of that, because I could show my mom Shaun of the Dead at this point, because I've shown her plenty of other things that are, I watched The Fly with my family. Like,
nice.
And I really did it just to get a rise out of them when his body parts start falling off, because yeah, hearing everybody go, "Oh, Jesus Christ," is hilarious. It is funny, but I think Hot Fuzz, which I don't think I've shown my family, or maybe I have. I saw it with my dad. My dad was there with me when I saw it. So I know he's seen it, but for me, Hot Fuzz is a movie that I think you could show to anybody, and everybody would find something to enjoy, because at the end of the day, it's an action movie, but it's also really funny, which is the other thing that allows it to be an easy inroad, because who doesn't love a good funny movie? And yes, there is some of it that is kind of tongue-in-cheek, in-joke comedy where you have to appreciate, you know, action movies, but a lot of it is just Edgar Wright being really funny as a human being, and him and Simon Pegg writing something that's eminently hilarious for fans of the genre, but also people that are seeing this for the first time. So that's my answer, and I feel like, you know, maybe I've done a good job at selling it. I don't know.
You have. Before I go into it, I want to mention a couple things, because you brought up a couple of references that sparked a couple things. I mean, one, you mentioned The Fly. I can't wait until we have a David Cronenberg episode. That is going to be so much fun to discuss in detail. Number two, I don't think you and I have ever talked about Jason Statham. I'm not one for like, hey, I've got a fun fact, but I heard this the other day and it blew my goddamn mind. I just went and made sure that this is correct. Jason Statham, every single thing he has ever acted in has had a theatrical opening, and he's never been on a TV show. So every single thing, no direct to video, no like made for TV movies. None of his films are like direct to DTV sequels, anything like that. Everything has had a theatrical opening. How many actors can you think of that can ever say that?
Not many, if
like,
any.
I can't think of any others.
I love him. I love Jason Statham. Like, I think it was Kevin Pollak was like, you can boil an impersonation of Jason Statham down to "no, I mean." I mean, that's all it is. Like, that right there is Jason Statham. He's, I don't know, like, he's as inoffensive an action star, I think, as I've seen. Like, and, you know, I think Gerard Butler and Clive Owen are kind of in that similar camp. But I think that Jason Statham thinks that he understands what brings joy to other people about what he does, and he's able to lean on it, which is he never takes himself too seriously, best I can tell.
So, Hot Fuzz, you lean into the action side, which I agree, this is great. But for those, trying to keep in mind that we're talking to people that have possibly never seen any of these movies. So, Hot Fuzz, when you just describe it as an action movie, it's really hard to kind of picture what that could be, because it's not just an action comedy. This is a buddy cop comedy film. This is an action film. This is a mystery film. This is a conspiracy film.
It's a whodunit, right?
It's all a whodunit, and everything is leading to a very satisfying ending. And everything that is built into this, including, like I brought up before, the musical beats, the in-references with people that he's worked with on Shaun of the Dead and on Spaced, and all of these people that are just willing to come back and continue working with him because it's fun and he's good at what he does. That is all just super great. This is a fantastic pick. It's not my pick, but this is a really great first pick. My pick, which I believe I'm picking differently than you because if I remember right, you don't love this movie. I am going to have to go with, of course, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And the reason I'm picking this is it is just that much more mainstream than Hot Fuzz. This has a very mainstream cast. And when you look back at it now, you kind of go, how in the hell did Edgar Wright make a movie with all of these people? But the truth is at the time, they weren't all of these people. They were just kind of some people. And now they're all happen to be massive names. The music in it is great, which a lot of us can relate to. It's a fun story. And now on top of all that, it has an animated series that is coming back on Netflix. It's already been out, and people love that. And a lot of the same people reprise their roles. And I think Edgar Wright's even got executive producer credit or writing credit on it, at least. It's just fun. And I know it's not for everybody because our main character is not likable, and the humor can be a little quick for people. It's very like shotgun blast of jokes, which is not always everybody's cup of tea. But I think in this filmography, I think it's the one that is the least offensive way for you to begin to get into his style.
I am not the biggest fan of this movie. Not for any one specific reason. It's never resonated with me the way the rest of Edgar Wright's filmography has, or at least most of his filmography has. I won't say all, because that's not the case anymore. But I don't know, like, the thing that is crazy is that it has so many people in it. I mean, some people were post their big thing, like Brandon Routh is in this movie, this was post Superman, which made no waves, at least not in a positive way. And so it's funny to have him in this. But yeah, like you mentioned, Jason Schwartzbaum, Michael Cera alone. I mean, there's so many people in it that, it's hard not to love it. And I think 1A and 1B, same coin, different head. Like, that's where we're at. And I think, to your point, like, it is the more mainstream option, which in a lot of ways, like, that's not necessarily what our first question is, but sometimes that may be the answer, which is the most mainstream thing. I think it's funny, though, that if there's another universe out there, which I'm sure there is, that version of Ryan and Chris are talking about Ant-Man and how Ant-Man is the first Edgar Wright movie you should check out, and probably wouldn't even have to sell anybody on it because they would have already fucking seen it. Because if Ant-Man 2015 were an Edgar Wright movie, that's still when people are heavily invested in the MCU.
Right.
In a way they're not now. And yes, the MCU will come up on every episode of this show by hook or by crook, and it's going to be me or it's going to be Ryan, but sometimes it's both of us, but it's going to keep coming up, and we haven't done an episode yet on it, but we will, and it won't just be one, it'll be multiple, so prepare yourself for that. But the MCU is kind of part of the filmic landscape that we can't avoid anymore, and Ant-Man not being Edgar Wright's Film Foundation, answer kind of feels like a shame because, 2/3 of the way there, we just didn't get him as director is kind of what it feels like. But yeah, I think as much as I'm not a fan of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I think it's a great pick. And I think just like Hot Fuzz is an obvious pick, I think Scott Pilgrim versus the World is maybe the even more obvious pick, to your point.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to be obvious necessarily. I don't think
it's a bad thing.
No, and I'm not trying to be defensive. I think that it is one that, again, if you hadn't seen it, it's almost surprising, which is why I'm leaning towards that, because it's one of those, like, everybody's kind of seen this movie. And again, the cast, like we mentioned a couple there, but We're talking Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Kieran Culkin, Anna Kendrick, Brie Larson, Aubrey Plaza, Chris Evans, Brandon Routh, Jason Schwartzman, Mae Whitman, Bill Hader, Clifton Collins Jr., Thomas Jane. It is crazy how many people he got in this movie.
Yeah, and most of the people that you mentioned have like bit parts, like one or two scenes, if that. Like literally, Chris Evans is essentially in one scene in that movie. Like, really. It's one big scene, but he doesn't show up throughout the movie. It's kind of just one big scene. But yeah, it's 2010. We're in the early stages of these people catching fire, or, catching fire the way you can in the film industry now, which is being cast in a Marvel movie.
And the whole like cameo thing where they're only in it for a couple minutes, it's on purpose. It's played for comedy. It works with this style of movie. I could see that failing in other movies, but that's why you kind of got to see this. It is absolutely worth checking it out. But now that we've nuanced that to death, I love some of these deeper conversations that we're going to get into with our question number 2 and 3. So let's get into that. Chris, question 2, as usual, could you recommend a lesser-known film within our subject of Edgar Wright, which might not be suitable as a first-time watch for newcomers? So, since this is our first episode, once again, I'll explain what this means. Usually, this is something that it's still a great movie, but normally it's something that if you watch this first, it might actually put you off to the rest of the films because it's a little bit just like too far out of left field to be something that's welcoming to everybody that's new to this actor, director, subgenre, whatever.
And to your point, the idea that, again, like it's the concept of like a deep cut or a B-side for those of you that are, music listeners, because again, like I understand that not everybody is going to want to watch this next movie. And if they watch it, they're not going to get as much of it that they could out of it if they watched it second or third. And that's the other thing we have to keep in mind, because again, sometimes these movies build on one another in terms of seeing what the director can do, where they're going in their career, or the kinds of things that they begin to inject into the movies that are more them. Because my answer to this question is a movie that I think, I mean, and I know actually, I didn't like it the first time I saw it. I watched it once, I didn't like it, and then I've watched it so many times since then in the last, 10 years, which I would consider to be the formative years of my movie watching now, which is watching movies with a critical eye and unable to enjoy them any other way, which is super fun. Don't do this if you're unwilling to stop enjoying movies in a kind of fun and casual way. But The World's End is a movie that I saw it in theaters and I fucking hated it. I thought that everything about it was kind of an affront to me as someone who loved Hot Fuzz, because The World's End is a movie that needs to be enjoyed much later in life than when it came out for someone my age. I was 23 when it came out. I didn't watch it again until I was at least in my late 20s, early 30s. And it's a movie about what happens to you and your friend group the older you get, and what does that mean, and how does that play out when you go back to your hometown to try to go home again, as it were. And we all know, as the good song says, you can never go home again. And that's kind of the message at the middle of The World's End, which is things change, and sometimes you can see them change and sometimes you can't. But at the end of the day, things change. And I think The World's End is also an interesting inflection point for Edgar Wright, because after The World's End, the kinds of movies that he makes are not him, but they're very different for what we consider to be an Edgar Wright movie. And in a lot of ways, The World's End is kind of the last kind of movie like this kind that he's made, because Scott Pilgrim versus the World is very much his movie, his kind of movie. And Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho, best I can tell, and I'm sure you'll agree, or at least corroborate my thoughts, those are very not the kinds of movies that we expect from Edgar Wright in a whole host of ways. The World's End is a lot of things. It's kind of the denouement of a certain kind of film that Edgar Wright is clearly making. He may make another one like it, but I kind of don't think it'll happen, because these three movies together are so perfect. But The World's End is just, it's a hard movie to watch if you've never seen his kinds of movies, because you kind of have to watch Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz to truly appreciate the journey that he's going on as a director with the actors and with his creative partner, who's Simon Pegg. And, you know, the two of them wrote Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and The World's End together. And The World's End feels like, to me, a movie that you make with a friend you've had for a very long time, when the two of you sit down to talk about what it's like to have been friends for 20 plus years. And that's the thing. You and I have not known each other that long, not even a year at this point. But I have had friends that I've known for 20 years, and I have never sat down and talked with them about what it's like to be friends for 2 decades. But The World's End feels like a thing that's an externalization of that idea, which is, what does it look like to have childhood friends as an adult? Like, to have these friendships continue into your adulthood, which some people have and some people don't. I know plenty of people that don't talk to people from pre-high school, or they don't have high school friends anymore. So this movie, for that reason alone, is not something I would suggest to everybody, because it takes a certain specific thing to be like, oh, you'll probably appreciate this movie a little bit more, because it really is about what does it mean to have long-term friendships with people that go essentially your entire life. And what does that mean? And what does it mean to be the one person who hasn't grown up in that group of friends, which you and I probably internalize a lot more than maybe a lot of people do, that's the other thing that the movie is at the heart of it, which is a movie about you kind of being the last one to wake up to the idea that things have changed. And that's a hard thing to talk about, because I understand that being introspective is not something that everybody wants to do. And that's the thing about The World's End. Ultimately, it's an introspective movie. And so is Shaun of the Dead, and so is Hot Fuzz. But The World's End, I think, is more boldly and obviously a slower, more introspective movie, even though ultimately it is about a group of friends fighting robots taking over their hometown. But if I sold it to you that way, you'd probably be like, okay, it sounds like Shaun of the Dead. And it's like, it couldn't be further from that if it tried.
Right.
So, that's my pick, The World's End, which I think, like I said, it's probably, for me, it's probably my favorite thing that he's done. Really. That's the other thing. I love Hot Fuzz. I think Hot Fuzz is a perfect movie, but The World's End is probably my favorite Edgar Wright thing.
I think you have the right answer here. I don't think there's anything else to answer on this question other than The World's End. And the reason being is because of this visceral reaction that you brought up at the beginning of this, which I'm not going to say is universal, because it certainly isn't, but I feel like more and more and more people are steamrolling in this thing where people are realizing, I hated this movie the day I saw it, and now I adore it. And the funny thing is, I think what happened with the way it was produced in the timeline of Edgar Wright's life is it came out when a lot of us that grew up with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz were not quite ready to wake up to the realities of life that were in The World's End. And people watching it again 5 or 6 years later go, oh, holy shit. Okay, now I completely understand it. And the weird thing here is, like you said, you do kind of have to understand Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz coming before it, because the nuance of Simon Pegg playing this unlikable, terrible character completely subverts everything that you've seen in these first 2 films that you're expecting to see in this. And the way that it's filmed, it's shown like they want you to empathize with him at first, and it completely just throws you for a loop when you can't. This guy is an insufferable prick, and that's okay. That's okay to have in the movie. And as this goes on, and you just brought up that the first 2 are a send-up. This one is too. It's a send-up of all 17 different sci-fi genres, which is great. It's all done really well. But that takes a complete just backseat portion of this film to the underlying understanding of life changes for people. And this movie is not easy to watch unless you're prepared for it. But the fact that it's a part of this filmography that you have grown with potentially makes it so much more powerful at the end of the day. And so, I think this is not a great film to watch as the first film, because you kind of want that power with it. You want to sit with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz for a period of time before you ingest this, and it will be a better experience for you if you do that.
I know plenty of people that are like, I fucking hate this movie. And then I ask them, when was the last time you saw it? And their answer is always when it came out, or a couple, more than a couple years ago. And I'm always, beating the drum here like a ding dong going, you should rewatch it, because I tell people to rewatch it that are just like myself and yourself, who have a list of things we'd love to get to at some point, but realistically never will. And The World's End, I think, is on several people that I talk to or record with on their list, because I've mentioned it plenty of times, but the likelihood they ever get to it's pretty low because we spend all of our time watching things to talk about. But like yourself, I've been beating the drum about this movie since I saw it as a, quote, adult, unquote. But it is a hard movie to love because, yeah, I find it really hard to hate Simon Pegg because he's just so goddamn lovable. And he's, I don't know, he's such like a good nerd that it's hard for me to watch him be this like prick asshole character. But he plays it really well, and you know that he had a good time writing that character because it feels, if anything in that movie feels like he specifically wrote it, it's that character feels like he specifically wrote that character and the way that he interacts with all the other characters. Because it's, I don't know, that character that Simon Pegg plays in The World's End is, it's like all the bad things about Shaun and Shaun of the Dead with none of the positive. It's just, for as righteous and like good-hearted as Nicholas Angel is in Hot Fuzz, his character in The World's End is that in reverse 180, just the worst of the worst in every way.
Yeah, and it's done thematically so well in this whole, like I mentioned earlier, Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, which, if you've never heard that phrase before, it's a ice cream flavor that is out of the UK, and that it's a common phrase, so their understanding of that. But it gets slightly referenced in Hot Fuzz. But yeah, this whole trilogy of sorts is so interesting to look back on and realize he was just setting me up to learn so many like random ass life lessons through this weird robot alien invasion film that is all about drinking.
And to your point, like on the face of it, it doesn't sound like the kind of movie that would move you emotionally, but it is. And right. I think that the credit goes to Simon Pegg and obviously Edgar Wright, but I mean the entire cast, but obviously Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg wrote the film, and Edgar Wright directs it in a way that, again, he's not getting in the way. He never gets in the way of his movies. Like, unlike so many directors who kind of want to be part of the movie, and I'm not saying Edgar Wright doesn't show up in his own movies, because he does, but I think he lets the message speak for itself. And The World's End is a movie where message received directly. And yeah, it's a hard movie to watch. It's a hard movie to love, but I think it's a movie worth checking out and worth finding a way to love. And if you can't, I totally get it. And like you've mentioned, there are going to be some people that don't resonate with it, but that's because some of it is like specific life things that you have to be kind of not necessarily prepared for, but have a commonality to. And I don't think that everybody's going to have the same commonality of The World's End, because again, there are some people that don't have high school friends as adults anymore, and I get it. And that would be a hard suggestion to make for anybody, but if I know that you don't have that, it would not be something I would even think about suggesting.
Right. And that's, either way, I think there's a lot that you can get out of this film, no matter what.
I agree.
All right, so that takes us to our question number 3, which I think is going to have some of our most fun discussion for this topic today. And question number 3 is always going to be, what is the biggest impact that our subject today has had on pop culture? Now, again, since this is episode 1, I'll explain it just a little bit. Heads up, this does not have to be just a specific film. It can be a specific film, but it doesn't have to be. It can be something like inspiring other filmmakers. It can be something like setting up charities. It can be something like mental health awareness. It can be just anything that had a massive impact on the world / filmmaking / pop culture. I mean, for some of these people, like Steven Spielberg, spearheaded some of the original stuff for CGI and blending CGI with practical effects in Jurassic Park. And that has been so impactful for so many people that you could argue that's one of the biggest impacts he's had, but it's also Steven Spielberg. So you could argue about 19 other things, and everybody would say, yes, you are correct. But with Edgar Wright, I think that there's a lot less answers here. So, Chris, what is the biggest impact Edgar Wright has had on pop culture?
I think the biggest impact he's had is introducing the world to Simon Pegg. I mean, look, you could say Edgar Wright has, been a good arbiter for pop culture and all those things, and you'd be right. But I think introducing us, the movie-going public, to Simon Pegg through Spaced and Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and The World's End, 3 movies where he is the lead, goes a long way to Simon Pegg being in Mission Impossible as someone that shows up in like every movie after 3 or 4, I think. I mean, he's a mainstay in action movies now, unironically. It's not, we want to see him because he was in Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. It's, no, we want to see him because he's part of the Mission Impossible group or team. Again, that for me is a pretty big deal. I mean, Simon Pegg has a voice credit and was in the suit in Force Awakens. He's Unkar Plot in The Force Awakens, which is fucking nuts. Because Simon Pegg was watching the original trilogy as a kid going, I'd love to be in these movies. And because of his friendship with Edgar Wright and his collaborative works that he worked on with Edgar Wright, he was able to be in a Star Wars movie, which is any nerd's dream.
And Star Trek.
That's true.
So it covers both sides.
And Star Trek. Playing a character in Star Trek. Not just in Star Trek, playing a character in Star Trek. Which is, I mean, Scotty is, as big of a character in Star Trek as you could theoretically have, right, short of Kirk and Spock and McCoy. Then you've got Scotty as 4th or 5th. I mean, again, depending on who you ask. But James Doohan made that role his, and then Simon Pegg said, no, let me make it mine now. So
literally named in the most iconic quote from the series, too.
Yeah, exactly. So in my mind, Simon Pegg is kind of my answer. Is it the only answer? No, unless it is your answer as well, but I don't think it will be. But Simon Pegg is, again, I think he's an arbiter of good nerddom, which is he is trying to, like we're trying to do, bring more people into the fold of these kinds of things. Star Wars, Star Trek, Mission Impossible, action movies, whatever, what have you, sci-fi. However Simon Pegg angles it, trying to bring people in, that exists because Edgar Wright made him, not made him famous, but I mean, look, Simon Pegg is the lead in Shaun of the Dead, and he's the lead in Space. So somebody between the two of them saw the intrinsic value of Simon Pegg and said, oh, you're not only good at writing, but you could also star in this stuff? Okay. I mean, good Lord. How many writing duos would love for one of them to be able to also be an actor, right?
Right. And really good at it, too. That's the other thing. We're not even mentioning, yes, he's great for nerddom and all that, but because he's actually really great at this.
Yeah, he's funny in plenty of things that have nothing to do with Edgar Wright. I mean, literally, again, there's plenty of things that he has done. Like you mentioned, Star Trek and Star Wars. Edgar Wright had nothing to do with either one of those. He's amazing in Star Trek. Star Wars, I mean, he's not really in it, but, I mean, he's good enough. I mean, he's in the best of the last 3 Star Wars movies, so at least he has that going for him. But yeah, Simon Pegg just, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that he's worked on that's not Edgar Wright stuff is interesting. It kind of falls into comedy because I think Simon Pegg just is a funny guy.
Funny.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. But yeah, that's my answer. What's yours?
Before I answer, we probably should bring up a film that when we're talking about Simon Pegg being an arbiter of nerddom, there is a film that is the most Edgar Wright film ever that Edgar Wright did not make, which Simon Pegg and Nick Frost made together, which is the film Paul. This was directed by Greg Mottola. It came out in 2011, and it's basically about these two guys that are trying literally to go to Comic-Con, and after that, they're going to chase down, alien invasion sites, and they happen to get a real alien, which is, of course, voiced by Seth Rogen. Now, this movie is all about pop culture references and all that, but really, this is rooted in a realistic set of 2 characters in Simon Pegg and Nick Frost that are this just perfect chemistry duo that you find yourself relating to, enjoying in every single scene, loving. It is a really fun movie, and it does feel very Edgar Wright, and not only in the fact that it's those 2 acting in it, but it kind of has a lot of similar styles and voices in it. And to be fair, I feel like Greg Mottola made this kind of aping the style of the previous Edgar Wright films, and I think it probably made it a better film.
I would say that Simon Pegg's voice probably comes through more than anybody's in Paul. And to your point, I think the fact that Simon Pegg's voice is so strong, Greg Mottola had his work cut out for him. He's just probably like, okay, like this is probably easier than anything else. Because, it feels like an Edgar Wright movie, but Edgar Wright movies are also technically Simon Pegg movies. So, yeah, I mean, neither one of us mentioned Paul, but Paul is such a fucking fun movie. I haven't seen it in the longest time, but I remember loving it in every way possible because there's a character named Lorenzo's Oil, which is just, and it's played by Jason Bateman of all people too. I don't know, like Paul is one of those movies that I think about and I haven't gotten around to rewatching in a long time, but every time I think about it, I'm like, I really remember loving this movie.
Yeah, it's certainly worth it. I would like to rewatch it as well. So question 3, biggest impact on pop culture. I've talked about this subject that I'm going to lead into here over on my channel, The Disconnected, quite a few times in the last couple of years, because it's something I've noticed, and that's in the subject of horror filmographies and the way that we craft films. There are cycles, of course. There's always cycles, whether it be with actors or directors or a genre itself. If you look back in terms of what is popular, generally when it comes to horror, vampires and zombies don't usually share a space. Every once in a while, you'll have a breakout film that's like randomly popular for a couple years. But usually, if you're from one of the genres that is popular at that moment, whether it be zombie or vampire, it's kind of hard to break through unless it's just this amazing movie. And so when you start looking back at how we were trending through the 80s and 90s, we were very vampire heavy. Everything was coming out. We had Salem's Lot. We had all kinds of random like indie vampire movies in the 90s that we might talk about on this channel in the near future. We had all kinds of movies that were big, like The Lost Boys, that were just super popular. Then you got into like the artsy, like Bram Stoker's Dracula in the 90s. That was huge. I mean, so many people saw that movie. It was a massive hit. But then zombies don't really have a stake in horror during those years. Sure, every once in a while, there's a couple movies that make a fairly big impact. Like obviously Return of the Living Dead is a big impact. But when you think about it, there's not like George A. Romero's not out there making huge zombie hits in the late 80s and early 90s and to the late 90s when vampires were massive. And so one of the things that I'm going to posit here is that I'm going to say that Edgar Wright is what has given us this current long-running fascination that we have with zombies. Now, I'm not saying that Edgar Wright is the first one to make a zombie movie. Of course not. Just a couple years before this Shaun of the Dead came out, we got 28 Days Later, which is a huge deal. Danny Boyle made a frickin' masterpiece. I love that movie. It's great. However, it didn't have the mainstream appeal that Shaun of the Dead did. Shaun of the Dead was like this indie success that a lot of people did not see coming. And because it's a comedy, it scratched a lot of itches for a lot of people. And so following 2004's Shaun of the Dead, you start seeing more people being more risky with making zombie movies. And it just so happened that right about this time, the Walking Dead comic was getting very, very popular. And so as a last-ditch effort with vampires, we got a little bit of Twilight thrown in at the end of the 2000s. But unfortunately, those were not what vampire fans were looking for. So in 2010, The Walking Dead burst onto the scene and changes everything for zombies for the foreseeable future. And now, for the last 15 years, you can't go even a couple days without seeing a Walking Dead show on AMC. You can't go 6 months without having a huge zombie movie put out into theaters. We've gotten zombie romance movies. We've gotten like killer plague movies. We've gotten sequels to 28 Days Later. We've gotten announced right now sequel, 2 future sequels, not only to 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, but now they're doing 28 Years Later. There are so many of these that have become popular because there are not a lot of great vampire movies being made right now. And now, again, that's not to say that in the last 15 years we haven't had any, because there's some that I've loved. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. Going a little bit earlier than that, Let the Right One In is amazing. Let Me In, the American remake, is surprisingly good. Thirst, Park Chan-wook's Thirst is fantastic. However, none of those have had these amazing mainstream breakthroughs that have changed the course of how we're cycling through horror right now. So I think like we have Edgar Wright to thank for what's going on with zombies. We also have Edgar Wright to blame for what's going on with zombies. Without Shaun of the Dead, I don't think we get the proliferation of The Walking Dead that we have now.
I'm always surprised by how many people have seen Shaun of the Dead, right? Like, it is shocking. And I think that kind of speaks to, I mean, look, 2004, right? What other movie comes out that year? That Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead remake, right? That's 2004, isn't it? Like, I
thought it was later than that.
No, I think it's like 2004, 2005, maybe. I mean, it's pretty.
I'll check it out while you're looking.
It's pretty early on in what this quote cycle of zombies that you're alluding to.
It was 2004. You're right.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm getting at. Like, I think that these two things kind of come in at the right time, and they're both doing similar things. One of which is again kind of taking the rom-com and turning it into a zombie movie, but also that Dawn of the Dead, as kind of much as it is maligned because it's a Zack Snyder movie, it's more a James Gunn movie than it is anything else.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, James Gunn and Edgar Wright, I think those two have a conversation together in terms of the kinds of movies that they're making being very complementary. I think that the back and forth there is definitely on the same page. And so it's funny that, I think you bring up Shaun of the Dead in 2004. I bring up Dawn of the Dead in 2004, but we're having the same conversation, which is zombies aren't a thing without Edgar Wright. And you're right. And you're totally right. And at the end of the day, The Walking Dead not going away, even though at this point people hate watch it, again, can be blamed on Edgar Wright, but it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of part and parcel with something sticking around way too long and nobody doing anything interesting with it anymore either.
Right. And over those last 15 years, again, there's been lots of great zombie movies. I'm not saying that throughout that entire time there is, nothing that good that's come from out of it. Because again, this is not a bad thing at all. I think this is totally great that Edgar Wright did this. My favorite zombie movie came out, gosh, I think I'm going on like 8 years ago now. I don't remember what year it came out, but Train to Busan, I think is one of the best zombie things. And without Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead leading the charge through all this, we probably would not have gotten there. It's one of those crazy things where the chain reactions, the pop culture impacts that some of these things can have, you go through World War Z to get to Train to Busan. You go through Train to Busan to get to Friend of the World. You go from Friend of the World to look back on something like Warm Bodies. You go to Girl with All the Gifts. You go to all of these zombie movies that are just random ass parts of the last 15 years of our lives that a lot of people adore. And when you think about it, just the whole vampire zombie cycle is crazy. And I feel like we're really due. Something needs to come out and, pardon the pun, but like take a bite out of zombies and get us back into a pretty killer vampire flick. We need something to come in and just shake things up finally.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it's just one of those things. Edgar Wright, I don't think he set out to revitalize the zombie genre,
no.
but he did.
It's that simple. He actually did. And it's something that's been a huge legacy. And what's funny is it came so early in his filmography. And so it's not like he hasn't lived up to those heights, but it's so weird that things that he's done has not impacted things like that first one. I'm kind of shocked that he hasn't been making more over the last few years. I kind of wish that he had more coming out. I know that we're just about done with the Edgar Wright portion of the discussion, so I really want to kind of shout out Last Night at Soho. I know a lot of people have looked down on this and just simply not watched it, which is wild to me. It's pretty good. I know a lot of people were soured because it was very heavily marketed as this is Edgar Wright's horror movie. that's not actually the case, unfortunately. It's more of like, again, another like gothic romance mystery kind of, but the way that it's carried out, it's pretty good in my opinion. And we've kind of glossed over Baby Driver a lot tonight. I like Baby Driver a lot. I'm a big fan of heist movies. I'm a big fan of let's team up and rip somebody off and do it to great music type of movies, especially when there's great comedy. And this movie it ticks all those boxes. Unfortunately, it ticks there's a creep in the movie, and we got the Kevin Spaceyism to discuss. But I mean, the movie's still great, and Kevin Spacey's always been a great actor, so it's hard not to just love everything about Baby Driver.
Baby Driver, for me, not a movie that resonated with me. Similarly to Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I think I kind of alluded to it a little bit. Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho seemingly are the two things that Edgar Wright has done that people are like, that's not you, Edgar, that's somebody else. Baby Driver, I feel like, and continue to feel like, it's Edgar Wright doing a Tarantino thing, which is fine, but I'm not the biggest fan of Tarantino personally, so I'm not necessarily interested in seeing one of my favorite directors do his best version of somebody else, because for me, Edgar Wright's movies have a lot more impact on my life personally than anything Tarantino has ever done has. And seeing him do the Tarantino thing, just not interesting. So Last Night in Soho was kind of a skip for me too, because it's like he's not doing his thing. He's like doing something else. Maybe Last Night in Soho is a little more Edgar Wright's thing than Baby Driver is. But yeah, like I said, I alluded to it earlier, but everything pre the Ant-Man movie that we don't have in this universe is stuff I'm really into for Edgar Wright, but post that, it's just kind of been weird. Like a documentary, which is cool. I mean, Peter Jackson's doing that too. But to your point, I'd love to see Edgar Wright do something else. Like, please, because I'm kind of waiting to see what the next great thing Edgar Wright does is, because whatever it is probably has a high chance of being at least interesting.
And it doesn't have to be Simon Pegg and Nick Frost to be good either. He's made great stuff with and without them.
And you mentioned The Adventures of Tintin. Adventures of Tintin's a lot more fun than I think anybody would give it credit for, speaking of Peter Jackson. And Steven Spielberg, for that matter. The Adventures of Tintin, in my mind, ends up being a better Indiana Jones movie than any of the Indiana Jones movies post Last Crusade have been. And that is not damning it with faint praise. The Adventures of Tintin is a fun action movie that does not get enough love, but I understand why it doesn't, because it's one of those weird Robert Zemeckis things. And it's not a Zemeckis movie, but it's doing that actors being utilized as actors of the CGI variety. It's uncanny and weird, and I'm not a big fan of it, but The Adventures of Tintin is probably the best of that kind of thing, but there aren't a lot of other movies in that camp. What, Beowulf, Christmas Carol, and Polar Express. Like, yeah, to say it's the best of those that might be damning something with faint praise.
Well, and that's unfortunately a lot of people just simply won't watch it because it's animated, which on this show you're going to find out I adore animation, so we're going to talk about animation quite a bit, and we've got a lot more of those animation episodes to record soon. One thing that I do want to shout out about Tintin is you brought up it's a fun action movie and compared it to Indiana Jones. The big thing, though, is it's something that I think we're missing a lot of in like the 2020 to 2024 timeline right now. It's a pure adventure movie. We're not getting adventure movies. We're getting action movies. We're getting horror movies. We're getting comedy movies. We're not getting a straight adventure movie, which you go back and watch that first Indiana Jones movie, and it is adventure from start to fucking finish. That movie still rips. It's amazing.
Even Indiana Jones isn't an adventure movie anymore. Like, that's the sad state of affairs that we're in now, which is the final Indiana Jones movie came out, and it is not as good of an action movie or adventure movie as Tintin, which came out in 2011, which is 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I that would be my only out-of-pocket mention, because we've essentially talked about everything else. Because, like you alluded to, not a whole lot of movies in Edgar Wright's filmography as of right now. And more than likely, probably, 5, 10 more, if that, 10 being generous, 5 being more realistic, maybe somewhere in between the two.
Especially now that he's slowed down quite a bit. I mean, there's not Obviously 3 years isn't like the end of the world, and we've had a pandemic in there too, but the fact that he had 2 projects come out in 2021 and yet nothing since then is a little bit odd. And I guess I should ask, did you watch the Sparks Brothers documentary? I've not seen it yet.
I haven't seen it either. I know the people that have watched it that like the Sparks Brothers like it, and that people that don't know the Sparks Brothers at all like it as well. So good things. I guess Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is technically a Edgar Wright thing. But again, that's just a continuation of something else that he's already done, but he's serving as the producer.
And I doubt he was actually like involved in much of anything. He's just getting a check.
I mean, hey, nothing
against him for that at all.
Yeah, no, make money where you can, folks.
So, speaking of making money, I guess, let's go to somebody else that would make money, and let's build a cinematic bridge. Question number 4, what is a cinematic bridge to Edgar Wright? That is our subject today that we're discussing. So basically, again, since it's our first episode, we're going to explain. So what is a subject that somebody that's listening to this that maybe has never, ever seen any Edgar Wright films, what is something that if they were a fan of that, they would know, hey, potentially, I might be more apt to understanding and liking Edgar Wright as a director. What's your answer for this one there, Chris?
So, my answer, and I think this is a fair and apt comparison, he has a lot more films, but I think his films are kind of him as a director, even the ones that seem like they're for kids. That may have given away where I'm going with this, but I think if you are a fan of Mr. Robert Rodriguez and his offerings within reason, I think some people might go Spy Kids. If you like there's nothing wrong with Spy Kids. Spy Kids 3 is a genuinely fucking insane movie that has way more people in it as cameos than it really has any right to. But I think if you're a fan of Desperado, El Mariachi, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Death Proof, or not Death Proof, I guess, well, Death Proof, kind of, but that's Tarantino. But the other movie, Planet Terror, those kinds of things, if you're into that kind of stuff, though, to be fair, like you kind of mentioned, Last Night in Soho, not necessarily a horror movie. Robert Rodriguez kind of, sort of, has done horror. Yeah, more horror stuff. But I think, for me, Robert Rodriguez is a good answer. Speaking
of, he made a great vampire movie right before we got the zombie influx.
That's fair. From Dusk Till Dawn is still a movie that I love. I love that it's one of the few movies that can genre pivot as hard as it does, and there are not a lot of movies that can land that genre pivot. But for me, Robert Rodriguez I don't think Edgar Wright exists without Robert Rodriguez for a lot of reasons. I think because of the things that Robert Rodriguez would work on and write and kind of pave the way for people to be able to be indie filmmakers on their own talents, of their own accord. Robert Rodriguez is a huge kind of arbiter of indie filmmaking, doing it yourself, bootstrapping, whatever you want to call it. Edgar Wright, I think, exists in a post-Rodriguez world where anybody can make a movie. And look, anybody did make a movie, and Edgar Wright is one of those anybodies. So are they one-to-one in terms of the movies they make? No, but in terms of what they bring to the things that they work on, which is, I think, a genuine love and adoration for film, I think Robert Rodriguez is a good comparison. And I think if you've seen Robert Rodriguez's stuff, you probably have seen at least one Edgar Wright movie. I don't even think it would be by accident. It'd be like, oh, yeah, this totally makes sense.
I think you and I are both going to love discussions on a lot of these indie filmmakers that were, really getting their footing from 95 to 2005, that decade of everybody's just going to go out and make the damn thing sort of mindset. And your Kevin Smiths, your Robert Rodriguez, your Edgar Wright, these sort of people that
your Tarantinos,
yeah. He was slightly earlier, but yeah, we're going to love these episodes. I think it's something that we're going to have a lot more passion for because they hit a lot of our similar mindsets, and it was stuff that they raised us. We raised ourselves on those films, and it's going to be fun. I can't wait to do a lot more of those episodes. My answer for this one, I kind of hit the music side hard, and when I was looking back on who when you're watching the movie, you can watch this and know it's this director's film. Not just the needle drops, but like the moments where a certain film means something in the film, and you are, you're taken away in an underlying message, because we really hit that part hard on The World's End, and it really made me think of watching films from Robert Altman. And I know for a lot of people this is going to be a little bit of a stretch because they come from very different times, very different worlds. But if you start looking at things, specifically like Nashville, that's the one that, like, there's so much more to Nashville than what's on the surface, that I can totally understand appreciating a lot of Altman's greatest movies and going, I think I could probably find a lot to love with Edgar Wright. You've got McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which would be a great little intro to this. Even going all the way back to The Delinquents would be fun. But some of the stuff that he did is great. I mean, even like the late one with Kansas City, Gosford Park. There's so many that I think that people, not just like falling with his style, but understanding the sensibility behind the filmmaking and really crafting things with every single aspect in mind before you shoot it. I think there's not a one-to-one necessarily, but it's very much a bridge to the other there.
I have not seen a whole lot of, if any, Robert Altman films, so
Nashville is probably one that if you've certainly never seen Nashville, I'm almost going to suggest that we watch that together for your other show. I haven't seen Nashville in a long time, and it'd be fun to talk about it on CultureCast.
Yeah, I know that it's a good movie. That's all I know, or people at least enjoy it. I've heard people talk about it, but I have nothing to add on this because I haven't seen enough of his movies. So I'm going to defer to you being right on this one.
Well, I'm sure some people will argue in the comments, but either way, I think there's a lot to find in the Edgar Wright filmography, and pretty much just about anybody can probably find one of his films that really relates to you. And if you've never seen any of them miraculously, just find one that sounds appealing through our discussion tonight and pop it on. Just do something to discover more films that you've never seen before. We'd love to hear about it if you watch it and you end up liking it. And that's the biggest thing as we're, sort of bringing this in for a landing. All of our social media, all of our contacts and all of that stuff, we want to hear about it. If you're diving into some of these movies for the first time, or discovering a filmmaker or a genre or an actor or a franchise that you've heard about before, and our discussion sparked an interest where you wanted to go watch it, let us know. We would love to hear about that. Any fun stories we might end up sharing on here. But in the meantime, I really just want to say thanks for listening to our first episode. Chris, anything you want to point the listeners towards?
weirdingwaymedia.com. We've kind of already alluded to it. That's where you can go and check out effectively everything I work on. Patreon.com/CultureCast is where you can go to listen to the only show that's not on Weirding Way Media, which is Rankin' on Bond, where we talk about James Bond once a month. The Projection Booth's Mike White and Richard Haddam's Paranormal Bookshelf. Richard Haddam, the three of us do that a little bit, not as often as one might think, but we'll make it through James Bond, in about 5 years. So that's where you can go to hear that. But for the most part, weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can find everything I work on. What about you, Ryan?
If you like hearing me discuss any sort of film, I talk about physical media a lot on my channel, The Disconnected. It is a YouTube channel and podcast. I also have a podcast. I have a podcast network that is growing a little bit, hopefully soon. We've got a handful of podcasts on there right now. We've got Unsung Horrors. We've got They Live by Film. And we are just a group of people that like physical media and talking about that in the context of film in general. And if you are interested in that, look up The Disconnected. I'd love to have you. But like I said, we hope you check out our next episode. We hope you check out something from Edgar Wright. And we hope that our continued conversations on film will push you towards expanding your boundaries of the interest in film that you may have. Till next time.
Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Dev Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production Podcast Network. We hope to see you online.